Hello and welcome back to the Battle Room. My name is Colin, and today we're going to be reacting to a video that I was pretty interested in. Wolfe obviously makes great content. If you don't know who Wolfe is, he's basically the best player in VGC history, I want to say. Someone could argue maybe Ray is better, but a lot of people think Wolfe's the greatest player of all time, really big and successful on YouTube. And so a lot of people take what Wolfe say and they make it their opinion as well. So I wanted to watch this video because the title really intrigued me. Dynamax is the best mechanic. Here's why. Personally, I don't hate Dynamax. I've enjoyed my stay with Dynamax. I played for 3 years. Sword and Shield was out for 3 years, and I played consistently. I streamed every single day, basically 5 days a week. Sorry, not every day. 5 days a week, playing with this mechanic, because there's barely a time when we didn't have Dynamax. It was one season, so I spent a lot of time with Dynamax. And in my opinion, I don't think it was the worst mechanic. I don't think it was bad. I think it had a lot of depth, and it was fun to play with at times. But overall, I did like Megas and Z moves probably a little bit more. I really like Megas. I just wish they made more of them. And Z moves were frustrating at times, but I don't know. I think Dynamax was a little bit more influential than Z moves, and I don't know. I'm curious to see what Wolfe has to say about it. But personally, I like Megas the most, and I liked probably Dynamax second, and then Z moves. So I'm very excited for the new mechanic of Terra, but we'll see. We have no idea how it works or what it's going to mean for the metagame and us as competitive Pokemon players. But I thought this video was really interesting. I wanted to react to it. I've never seen it before, and I just want to see what Wolfe says about Dynamax, so let's hop into it.
The new battle mechanic for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet has finally been announced, so I thought it would be fun to look back and rank all of the mechanics we've gotten so far from a competitive standpoint. To be clear, I'm only focusing on the gimmicks that Pokemon has advertised to draw people into the new generation. So, Mega Evolution, Z-Moves, Dynamax, and Terastallization, which is destined to be misspelled for years to come.
Low-key, I really wish they just wouldn't have gimmicks. Like, one of my favorite metas that we played was probably BDSP. Like, I really enjoyed it. Like, in the middle of Sword and Shield, just to play around with just no Megas, no Z-Moves, no Terra, no nothing. It was just Pokemon. And I really wish we didn't have gimmicks, but they have to sell games.
I'll give my general thoughts on the Terastallization at the end of the video, but it doesn't feel right to rank it with the others until I've actually used it. If you would be interested in seeing how I'd rank every new mechanic introduced in Pokemon, like breeding or abilities, let me know in the comments. I know you're all dying to see how I think baby Pokemon stack up against regional variants. Let's just say one of them eats the other one for breakfast, and it's not mashed up into tiny pieces. All right, let's jump into today's topic. In dead last, Z moves. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Bye-bye.
I agree.
No, I'm just kidding. Well, not about Z moves. I realized how much I hate Z moves, and honestly, I never want to think about them ever again. Z moves were just a huge source of anxiety for me during their era of competitive Pokemon. For one, you would never know which one of your opponent's Pokemon was holding a Z Crystal or which Z Crystal they had. Kartana, for instance, would usually hold a Fighting or Grass Z Crystal, but it could also be Choice Band, Focus Sash, Assault Vest, or even an HP restoring Berry. You really wouldn't know until a few turns in, and by then it could be too late. Combining that with its Beast Boost ability, and this little piece of paper could steamroll your entire team.
I feel like Kartana, specifically, was just a huge problem in 2017. It was just the strongest Pokemon in the game, and you were forced to run a fire type like Arcanine. Arcanine was obviously one of the best ones because of Intimidate, but it just was, Kartana was just a beast. It really was. Because like Wolfe said, if you get caught and you get caught out by a Grass Z, it's over. There's nothing you can do. It's just going to snowball with Beast Boost. And so it was sometimes hard. Honestly, I would always play like it wasn't, or try to play around it like it wasn't. But then if it revealed it, it was really hard to tell. Obviously, as well, one of the issues with Z moves is the spread of information in tournaments. This is something that I don't think is talked about a lot, but information spread is really huge. Top players or people who are very social within the community have the ability to talk to other players, and they're friends with them, and they'll share information. So newer players can get kind of screwed over because the information is not shared with them. I'm not going to share information with just some random dude I met, but I will share information with my best friend Raghav. So it can get kind of funky, and Z moves definitely were an information thing that if you talk to enough people, oh, it's Grassy Kartana, I'll play accordingly. So it was really frustrating. It's really funny because I thought Wolfe was insane. In 2017, his Z move usage and the way he played, especially at Worlds, was peak Wolfe. And so it's kind of funny that he hates Z moves so much.
The only way to combat a Z move was to protect or switch into a Pokemon that's immune to that attack. But that would require an insane amount of foresight or frankly just luck. You can imagine how nerve-wracking this would be on a stage with hundreds of thousands of people watching you, especially if you didn't even know if your opponent's Pokemon had the Z Crystal in the first place. Every match felt like deal or no deal. One of the core issues with the Z moves in general was that across the board, they just did too much damage. Comparing it to Dynamax, where moves get on average about 1.5 times stronger unless they're really strong, in which case they get less, Z moves were basically doubling the base power of the average move. So even Pokemon that resisted the Z move could easily take 50% or more by switching into it. Because of this, Z moves were really hard to play defensive against, since you really only had 3 options: protect, switch, or let your Pokemon die. But what about Z moves that were defensive themselves? The Z versions of moves that didn't do damage mostly had pretty interesting effects, such as raising a Pokemon's stats, boosting its critical hit ratio, or even redirecting attacks to the user. For example, Z conversion allowed Porygon Z to raise all of its stats by 1 stage and turn its typing into normally electric. I'm almost certain they only did this because its name is Porygon Z. Z Trick Room would not only reverse the turn order, but it would also increase accuracy. I myself used this with Bronzong to make Hypnosis more accurate and make my opponents go night-night. Another fun Z move was Z Destiny Bond. This move would make every attack hit the user, with the idea being that it would knock it out and bring the opponent down too. It was basically Follow Me and Destiny Bond at the same time. I actually brought Z Destiny Bond Mimikyu with Snorlax to Worlds. It was a really cool strategy because you could use Z Destiny Bond and Belly Drum in the same turn, protecting Snorlax.
That combo was insane. After Worlds, it was super popular, and it was a huge part of the post-Worlds meta. I used it. It was so strong. It was super sick innovation at the time. It was so cool. I think Z Destiny Bond would have, if we figured it out earlier or we used it or more, it would have probably been like, I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe it was used a little bit, but it just never picked up as much as it did post-Worlds. It was just so effective, especially with Snorlax. Like, Mimilax became even better. It also, like, Wolfe's Mimikyu was one of the coolest Mimis I've ever seen, just because it runs Shadow Ball as well. And Mimikyu's special attack set is absolute garbage. But it was able to actually KO Metagross a lot of the time. And Metagross plus Salamence was a huge combo going into Worlds. And so Mimikyu had a high speed stat, could outspeed Metagross and do big damage to it before it even bulldozed. It was honestly really sick. And I think, like, Wolf's team, it looks so boring. Like, that year on paper, it looks pretty boring. But it's one of my favorite teams of Wolf's. Like, it's so sick, and I love the way Z Destiny Mimi interacts with the team. But it was... I'm a huge fan of this Mimi. I think it was really strong, and it was a really cool way to use Z moves because Wolfe used it very defensively, but also extremely offensively with the Shadow Ball into Metagross.
Then next turn, while Destiny Bond was still active, you could protect and use Trick Room. And if the opponent tried to stop Trick Room by knocking out Mimikyu, they would be KO'd as well. Clever, right? Well, if your opponent didn't attack that turn, then you basically wasted your Z move. Wasting your Z move would happen all the time, and though it wouldn't immediately lose you the game, it would put you really far behind. When your Z move can have up to 200 base power, you really don't want to waste it. So not only are you worried about getting hit by one of these things, you're also worried about whether or not you can even land your own. And sometimes your Pokemon who is holding a Z Crystal will get knocked out before you could even use it. By now, I imagine you're picturing 2 very nervous kids hunched over their 3DSs, jittering in silence. Every cell in my body was vibrating. Whatever picture you have in your head, I assure you that's exactly how it looked during every battle. Let me paint another picture for you, Bob Ross style. Here's a beautiful sunset shining through a gap in the leaves of a whispering forest. You're peeking through and feeling the breeze cooled by the river below. Now, throw that away and burn it. Z moves were an abomination. Before we talk about our next gimmick, let's talk about another abomination.
I do think Z moves kind of sucked. I do agree. Like, they were... It really was just like you had to get your Z move right, or you had to make your opponent blow theirs, and it just wasn't a fun gimmick. Not to mention all the godforsaken dances people did with them. Oh, God.
My subscriber ratio. Most of the people watching my videos aren't subscribed, so I've come to bargain. If you, my beloved viewer, subscribe to the channel, I will eat a banana. With such a tempting offer, I'm confident I will hit 1 million subscribers today. Anyway, back to the video. Next up is Mega Evolution. Megas are definitely better in that they don't turn me into a ball of sweat and anxiety, but they're arguably worse for the metagame. To begin with, there were only 28 Pokemon that could Mega Evolve.
I think if they added more megas, it would have been the greatest mechanic. Like if they just kept adding them over and over, oh my god, like just because that is the giant issue. I think as a whole is there's just not enough of them. And so it becomes over centralized. I'm sure Wolf is about to talk about it. But that was my biggest issue. Is it was just like there's like 3 of them that are good and they interact with each other. But I think that would be solved if they just kept making them. But they just stopped. So it just we never got any more and it just sucked.
Later, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire would add 20 more, bringing the total up to 48. To make matters worse, only about 10 of those 48 were ever even possible to be good, and only 5 of them were consistently good. If you picked anything outside of those 5, you'd be at a huge disadvantage.
Yeah.
This extremely small pool of Pokemon really limited your options when you were building a team. At least with Mega Evolution, you knew which Pokemon were capable of it and which of them would likely do it. Of course, there's always the chance that a Pokemon wasn't holding a Mega Stone, but come on. You see a Kangaskhan, you know it's Mega Evolving. The increase in stats plus a new ability were too good to pass up. Being able to change your Pokemon's type, stats, and ability with the press of a button is inherently cool. What about Z-moves is cool? You do a TikTok dance and your Pokemon gets more powerful? Please. Mega Evolving is sick. It also allowed for more creative defensive plays, or at least a way to relieve some of the pressure off your team. For instance, if you knew your Altaria was going to be hit by a super effective Dragon-type move, you could Mega Evolve it and become completely immune to that attack. Obviously, this would be a pretty dumb play on your opponent's part, but you're also dumb for using Altaria in the first place. Unfortunately, there are a lot of bad Mega Evolutions. Take Beedrill and Blaziken's Mega, for example. Beedrill, bad Pokemon, right? Well, what if we raised its attack like a lot, gave it adaptability so its stab was increased, and kept its defense stats the same? Okay, cool. What about its speed, though? Well, we'll raise it, but not enough to outspeed, like, I don't know, Jolly Landorus T holding a Choice Scarf. Well, then what's the point? One look from Landorus and Beedrill will immediately combust. Mega Beedrill has a defense stat of 40, and it's still a bug type, the worst type in the game. With Pokemon like Heatran and Thundurus being used by over a quarter of all players, Beedrill will probably only get a single move in before it gets KO'd. With such bad defense stats, it's just not worth wasting your Mega Evolution on it. And this sort of thing applies to so many other Megas. There's even cases where it's better not to Mega Evolve your Pokemon. Blaziken's Mega Evolution is notoriously worse than its non-Mega form holding a Life Orb. Mega Blaziken just looks cooler. The new designs are really hit or miss for me. I do really like some of them, but others are a bit strange. Why does it look like Gyarados and Swampert both missed Leg Day? Either way, I like that the designs aren't permanent. The ones that really shine, like Charizard X and Rayquaza, make for great entrances once they Mega Evolve. In hindsight, I also like that the transformation animations aren't that long. Whoa, transformation animation. That's fun to say. The cutscenes for Z-moves were so long, you could literally set your 3DS down and go get a whole meal. Not only that, but some of them were just horrendously animated. And to top it off, they weren't skippable. Like, seriously, what were they thinking? Okay.
Some of them, like, in a tournament, I know that, like, the Eevee one, for example, I think takes 60 seconds. And so the players who played Eevee, they would spend about, 9 rounds, potentially 3 games around, 18 minutes roughly, 27 minutes, bad at math, 27 minutes watching that Eevee animation per tournament. That's insane. Why is that a thing? Like, why does it have to take so long? I don't even want to know how much of my life I spent watching Dynamax or Z-move animations. I don't ever want to know that. If I die and in the post-game screen I get to see that, I would be appalled with how much time I've wasted of my life.
Sorry, I have to stop talking about Z-moves. Finally, we have Dynamax. I know this might disappoint some of you, but when it comes to competitive Pokemon, Dynamax is the healthiest and most balanced of the 3. And better yet, it allows for more strategy and team building opportunities.
It does.
To a lot of casual players, Dynamax is simply Pokemon get big. But to me, Dynamax is like a game within a game within a game. There's so many factors to consider by just clicking this button. Dynamaxing your Pokemon doubles your health, raises the power of your attacks, and gives all of your attacks a secondary effect. You would think the more complicated this gets, the more annoying it would be for competitive players, but I honestly believe Game Freak knocked it out of the park with this one. Because you can Dynamax any Pokemon without having to waste your held item slot, a lot more Pokemon have become competitively viable. Dynamax made offensive Pokemon more bulky and bulky Pokemon more offensive. and the 3-turn limit actually gave you a chance to stall it out. Of course, you are going to take some damage if you're trying to stall out a Dynamax Pokemon, but given that you can Dynamax your own Pokemon, it's not a huge deal. One of the things that I personally really like about Dynamax is how flexible it is. With Mega Evolution and Z-moves, you only had 1 or sometimes maybe 2 options each battle for using your special mechanic. This means that if you got, I don't know, KO'd by a surprise attack or something went a little awry, you probably wouldn't be able to use the mechanic, or at least to its full potential. With Dynamax, you're able to be really flexible on the fly. Maybe I go into a battle expecting to Dynamax my Charizard, but if I find myself in a position where Dynamax Groudon or, I don't know, Incineroar could win the game, I'm able to make that adjustment mid-game. I think this allows for a much higher skill ceiling than something like Z-moves or Mega Evolution.
I do definitely agree. Like when I first saw the mechanic, I thought it was just a better version of Megas because of the flexibility of it. Like you could max Togekiss on a whim, you could max Incineroar, like Wolfe said. Like there was just so many options for you, and so at first I really do think it was a fantastic mechanic. I think they just needed to do some quality of life changes, like maybe getting rid of the Wildfire, Fine Lash, Cannonade, Volcalith like mechanic. That one was way too strong and it was doing too much damage. Maybe just nerf the damage a little and then maybe make Max Airstream like a little weaker because Max Airstream was way too strong. And I think like if they just, or maybe not even the time steal, just like little tweaks along the way might have made this mechanic truly amazing. But unfortunately some of the pieces were really strong. Like as we saw at Worlds, the juniors and seniors was one with Cannonade and Vinelash, and Wildfire got to the finals. They were just a really, really strong mechanic. Charizard was on 25% of the teams at Worlds Day 2. Like that's just how strong Wildfire specifically was, and so I think that was one of the shakier, stronger pieces of it, and it was just a little annoying because it was a little too overpowered.
Unlike Z-moves that felt nearly unpredictable and Mega Evolution that lasted the entire match, Dynamax is fair to both players. It's even possible to avoid taking any damage for all 3 turns if you get the stars to align. If this happened to me, I'd honestly just praise my opponent for playing so well. I do think that Dynamax isn't perfect though. There's a couple oversights, let's say. One is Life Orb. Life Orb is designed for a game without Dynamax. It makes your moves 30% stronger and you lose 10% of your HP. Now in Dynamax, you're basically only giving up 5% of your HP, which is a massive difference. In 3 attacks, you would only lose 15% rather than almost a third of your health. Also, that 30% increase is way too strong given that Dynamax moves already make your attacks stronger.
Facts. Agree.
The
Hard
items
agree.
Choice Band and Choice Specs, which make your moves 50% stronger, don't work with Dynamax, probably because they would be overpowered. Also, the moves Max Knuckle and Max Ooze, which raise your physical and special attack respectively, have a lower base power than other max moves to stop them from being too strong.
They just suck.
This should also have been applied to Max Airstream, which is the strongest max move.
Facts!
The main other complaint I have about Dynamax is that the animations take way too long.
Sure,
oh,
yeah.
I get to say it again. The transformation animation is just a bit too long. With Dynamax also comes Gigantamax, the alternate Dynamax forms of Pokemon, each with their own signature move. These moves also have a secondary effect, but similar to Mega Evolution, G-Max moves were not all created equal. G-Max Vocalith and G-Max Wildfire did a ton of damage when they hit, and then chipped away a sixth of both opponents' HP for 4 turns. G-Max Resonance does damage and then sets up Aurora Veil. G-Max Tartness, however, decreases opposing Pokemon's evasion. Do you know how many times in my competitive Pokemon career I've used a move that decreases my opponent's Pokemon's evasion? 0.
I've used it once. It was fun with it was fun with Salazzle and Hypnosis. I think Gengar.
It doesn't really help that a lot of Pokemon they gave G-Maxes to aren't competitively viable to begin with. Really, it's more of a cool novelty, so I won't fault it too much. And all the new designs rule. So at least they've got that going for them. One aspect I don't like is how it forces you to use the G-Max move instead of the regular Max move. You can always just not feed it G-Max Soup, I guess, but there are some G-Max Pokemon that are better than their regular Dynamax variants. What if I want to use G-Max Vinelash one turn and then Max Overgrowth the next? I don't know, maybe it's just a balancing thing.
That'd be insane.
I just realized G-Max Soup probably sounds strange to those who haven't played Sword and Shield. Yes, G-Max Soup is a thing and it sounds disgusting. There's also Dynamax Candy, but that sounds pretty good. As I said at the beginning of the video, I don't feel comfortable ranking Terastallization among the other gimmicks until I use it.
I do think one last thing about the G-Max and the Dynamax in general is that like I do feel like a big issue as well is just like the items, like not just life orb. Life orb's obviously a very big offender, but like even assault vest was absolutely insane. Like just multiplying your special defense by 1.5 and your HP times 2, the multiplication, just like the stat stacking just gets out of control, and like dealing with like an assault vested Reshiram or Kyogre is just really frustrating and really like it's just really strong, and I don't know what you're supposed to do in that case. But yeah, like life orb, assault vest are really big offenders. It was just some items were just very much stronger than others, and so it made some of the Pokemon just like ridiculous to deal with. Weakness policy, how could I forget weakness policy? One of the prime offenders of Dynamax being sometimes a cancer mechanic. But yeah, it felt like some of them were a little overtuned and a little bit too strong, and I think Dynamax overall is pretty good, and I think that we spent a little bit too much time with it. I do think it was a pretty strong mechanic. Here's to Terra, though. Please be good.
Right now, it's looking like it probably won't make as many Pokemon competitively viable as Dynamax did, but it'll definitely do better than Mega Evolution and Z-moves. I'm sure a lot of the Paldea region's Pokemon will be designed with this mechanic in mind. We know Titan is a pure ice type. If we change its typing to water, for example, the rock and fire Pokemon that used to do super effective damage to it now completely lose their advantage. I also see a way in which this could break the metagame. It's this guy right here. Tyranitar has a horrible typing and still manages to dominate early metas because of its insane stats. If we change its type, it might just gain sentience and take control of your game. There's also Shedinja, which I probably don't need to tell you could be a massive problem, but I can't imagine Game Freak puts it in the game. As you can see, Pokemon with good stats and bad typing are going to benefit immensely via Terastallization. Those with poor to average stats probably won't get much out of it. That's not to say they won't get anything. Changing your type allows you to play defensively as well, but it will likely require some prediction. What if you Terastallize too early? You could lose your one Terastal Pokemon if your opponent just hits it with a different super effective move. If you predict correctly, you just saved your Pokemon for another turn and possibly the rest of the match. Your opponent is choice locked into ground type attacks. If you have a Pokemon that can Terastallize into a flying type, you just won the game. The reason I'm hopeful for Terastallization is that, similar to Dynamax, it doesn't require an item and any Pokemon can use it on the fly. I think this should mean that it has a pretty high skill ceiling when it comes to actually using it. So that's my ranking of the gimmicks we have so far. Sorry to disappoint you by putting Dynamax at the top, especially...
I do think Wolfe is like right with almost everything. Like it was, I think Dynamax had potential to be such a good mechanic, but there was just a few things such as Airstream, Life Orb, Assault Vest, and G-Max moves that just kind of affected it really negatively, and they become really central points. Like it is really cool when you got to max Incineroar and win a game because you max struck someone 3 times in a row to stop their Airstreams. I think that's so cool. But then there were games where I just pressed Wildfire and it one-shot an Incineroar. So there's like really small things that can be really frustrating, and I don't know. It's not the perfect mechanic, but I think it was a pretty strong one, and I really do like the approach Game Freak is taking of making it more on the fly and more within the player's control and being able to do it on a whim. I think that's a fantastic way to do it, and I hope they continue to keep that kind of mindset up. I still think they should just make more Megas. But that's just me. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great and amazing day. Please like, comment, subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. If not, have a great day. I'll see you next time.